Let's begin.
Hey there, scary story fanatics. Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. It's time to take to the streets one last time as the face of evil is finally revealed itself. Please settle in by your monitor screens for Doughboy420's epic conclusion to this second action-packed, blood-soaked saga. Not All Heroes Wear Capes, Book 2, Chapter 7. The whole world in his hands.
I found myself once again sitting in Officer Kraft's apartment, waiting for him in the shadows until I finally heard the lock of the door click open. "Hello, Officer Kraft." I greeted him as soon as he closed the door.
"Jesus Christ,"
Kraft said, completely taken off guard and startled by my presence.
"Haven't you ever heard of knocking?"
He asked. "Sorry, but I need your help again." I apologized.
"I'm not sure if I want to be the judge and jury and help you find new targets to execute."
Kraft replied. "I'm looking for a man named Solomon. Probably has some connection to one of the families," I informed him.
"Solomon?"
Officer Kraft questioned.
"We are probably looking for Solomon Vendetti, the middle son of Alfred and heir to the Vendetti estate. Guy's a real piece of work. On the surface, he's a philanthropist, millionaire playboy, gives to charities and lives it up with supermodels. But underneath all that, the guy is one ruthless son of a bitch. Rumor has it that he's responsible for the bodies that turned up in the river. The media dubbed them as suicides, but that's more your MO. These people had their eyes and tongues burned out of their heads, and their ears ripped off and missing."
He explained. "That definitely sounds like our guy." I agreed. "Where can I find him?"
"Usually out in the bay on his yacht, swimming in drugs and women. You think he's one of the monsters you're chasing? If that's the case, then we're all screwed."
Kraft feared. "He'll be the next one you find in the river," I informed Kraft, before texting Eideloln for a pickup.
"Careful with that one. He's not your typical street punk."
Officer Kraft warned me. "I'm the stuff of his nightmares," I informed Kraft, before Eideloln grabbed a hold of me and transported me out into the darkness of the night.
"Do you know where he is?"
Eideloln asked, standing on the basketball court of a nearby park. "Solomon Vendetti. We can find him on his yacht, out in the bay," I told her. "But we have to be careful. He's the last one."
Pride. Lucifer, right?
She asked. "I think so," I answered, feeling the fear in my own voice. If defeating Lucifer, the original sin, doesn't stop all of this, then nothing would. This was it.
You ready?
She asked me. "As I'll ever be," I replied, unsure of myself, but there was no turning back now. It didn't take long for us to find Solomon's yacht, the Nema, floating along the bay, bobbing gently on the soft waves as a party raged aboard. Music thumped and pounded in the night, so loud that it could be heard on top of a nearby building where Eideloln and I planned our next move.
I could just blink in and grab him.
Eideloln suggested. "Nah, we gotta be more careful with this guy. Something's different here," I replied.
Well, we can't just go in with our metaphorical guns a-blazing. Too many people could get hurt.
Eideloln added, trying to come up with a safe plan. Yeah, you're right about that. We gotta get on board, but we can't let him know who we are. We can't let him know that we have abilities like him, I explained, trying to wrap my head around this conundrum before us.
So what? We put on disguises and join the party?
Eideloln jokingly suggested. I simply turned and looked at her, as if to say, yes, this is exactly what we'll do, prompting a reaction of disbelief from her.
What? No way. You thought my idea of blinking in and out was nuts. But this plan is certifiably insane.
Eideloln scolded me.
And besides, we don't have any disguises to wear.
She added, Come on, you can't cook something up with your shadows? I asked, to which she replied with a look of disgust and disbelief. Eideloln then let out a relenting sigh and waved her hand around in the air, at which point I felt a tingling coldness begin around my ankles, and then it went up my legs and around my torso, down my arms, and up to my neck. What was that? I asked, kind of weirded out by it.
Look under your shirt,
she replied with a sigh. I looked beneath the suit that Eideloln had made for me to find a black necktie, over a matching black shirt and dress suit. I was shocked. She actually did it. I then looked down my pants to find black dress pants, before letting my pants snap back to my body once more. That's kind of weird. Couldn't you just put a suit on over my clothes? I asked.
Do you wear a dress suit over a top coat?
She asked, with a tone of sarcasm. I guess not, I replied, which triggered a look that expressed exactly no duh across her face. Well, what about you? I asked, as I began to remove my coat to reveal my dress suit beneath.
Turn around,
she said, spinning her finger in the air. Okay, I agreed, with a bit of confusion, spinning around to look across the roof and away from her. I heard clothing rustling and falling to the rooftop.
Okay, you can turn around now,
she replied. I turned around to find her in a one-piece black gown, with an almost feathered frill lining around the neck and bottom edges. It looked appropriate for the event, but almost gothic in nature. Nice choice, I told her.
Thanks.
She replied with a bit of an angered tone before asking,
Can we get this over with?
Yeah, let's go. Find a safe spot and beam us up, Scotty. I goofed, which prompted another look of disgust at my dad jokes. She sighed, and then in the blink of an eye, we were at the back of the yacht, where some jet skis hung aloft by cranes, swaying gently upon the waves of the bay.
So, what's this guy look like anyway?
Eideloln asked. I don't know, but I suspect we'll know him when we see him. Guy sounds like he would stand out in a crowd, I replied, as we made our way up some of the steps of the deck of the yacht. People were dancing, and colored lights were strobing along with the EDM beat. Everyone there was dressed up for the occasion, so our expensive-looking faux clothes did not look at all out of place. I scanned the area beyond the DJ booth and the dance floor to find women jumping into the large pool set within the deck, and near to that was a dining area with booths set in around the wall that separated the deck from the helm of the yacht. In one of the central booths, we spotted a man that was surrounded by gorgeous women, and he definitely looked and dressed the part of the guy that we were looking for. He wore a pearl suit, with a matching ivory-colored tie over a black shirt beneath. His long, platinum-colored hair almost matched his attire. He wore sunglasses, even though it was nighttime, and he had enough jewelry to feed a small country for a year, including the very artifact that we sought, the seal of Solomon itself. I wouldn't forget that ring anywhere, or the feeling it gave me when I gazed upon it, a feeling of unbridled power, yet a strange uneasiness, a kind of unearthly discomfort. It was then that we caught his eye, and he waved us over to him, so, reluctantly, we had no choice but to approach him.
Hello, my friends. Can I get something for you? Some steak? Maybe a drink, perhaps. My bartender makes an exquisite old-fashioned. Or a whiskey sour, perhaps. So good.
Solomon said with glee. That does sound delicious, but I'm gonna have to decline. I'm not much of a drinker, to be honest, I replied, before turning to walk away.
What about your lady friend?
He replied, grabbing her wrist and pulling her onto his lap.
Perhaps I could entrust her in a Long Island iced tea, or a handshake and daiquiri,
he said, in an almost predatory manner.
Nah, I'm good. Thanks, though.
Eideloln grumbled at the discomfort of the situation. I could feel the ring pulling at my internal organs, making them ache, making my stomach twist and contort, causing me to feel greatly ill. And I was a few feet away, while Eideloln was right there next to it. I could only imagine how bad it was for her, not to mention how she was being treated by this horrible man.
Come on now. It's a party and you're not gonna have a drink? Here for something a little stronger? More exotic, perhaps?
Solomon questioned with a smile across his face. Nah, man, just enjoying the scenery, I said, gesturing at the open water and the girls in bikinis that ran around the pool.
Want to know a secret about all these people? None of them get me. None of them are real.
He spoke, allowing Eideloln to stand once more before he leapt up from his seat and put an arm around me as if we were old friends. Well, I imagine when you get as rich as you do, it's hard to find people that are genuine. I tried to be on the same page with him.
No, you misunderstand. I mean, none of them are real.
He leaned in to make sure that I heard him, emphasizing his words as he waved his hand through the air, and as his hand passed them by, they completely vanished, until it was only the three of us standing on the deck of the yacht. Eideloln spun around and watched as everyone we thought was alive disappeared on the spot. I stood there, still in the tightening grasp of Solomon's arm around my shoulder.
You thought you could sneak in, but I knew you were coming the whole time. I knew when you would be here. I knew what you would look like. I can hear your thoughts and feel your convictions and your conflictions.
Solomon began, before turning to place his other hand on my opposite shoulder and look me in the eye.
I set this into motion. I passed the ring along as a gift from my family to Layman Brown, knowing what he would do with it and what it would lead to. There is something much bigger than you or I unraveling and unveiling itself before us. You know, Poseidon was the god of the sea, and of horses, oddly enough, and like a white horse upon the waves of the bay, I have come to conquer.
He finished, and released his tightened grip upon my shoulders before stepping backward, away from us, gesturing at his large, white yacht.
I could offer you anything.
He began.
Girls, drugs, money.
He spoke, making gorgeous women appear right in front of me, before they disintegrated into white powder and razor blades, along with glass-smoking paraphernalia and skunky-smelling plants, before those, in turn, became stacks of $100 bills that tumbled to the floor.
Fame,
Solomon continued, as flashes of paparazzi cameras began erupting from the darkness, while film cameras popped up next to a director in his chair.
power.
He added, as the area around us shifted and changed shape into a mirage of the Oval Office in the White House.
Or perhaps you want something a bit more personal. Revenge, maybe.
He offered, as an unknown man was stabbed to death in front of me.
Maybe something darker, more satisfying.
He questioned further, before the same man could be seen, tied down to a table, struggling, screaming, as bits of him were slowly cut off and peeled away to reveal the wet, pulsating flesh beneath the skin.
Whatever you want can be yours.
Smiled at me once more. You really are the king of lies. I smirked. I didn't want the falsehoods that he had to offer.
Imagine the things we could do together. Every good mafia boss needs a loyal hitman, and who better than a man who can make my enemies off themselves? It's perfect. A win-win. What do you say?
He asked me, holding out a hand to make a deal.
You think he wants to be the muscle for a pompous pretty boy like you in your dreams?
Eideloln spoke up, mocking him.
Let him speak for himself, young one.
Solomon spoke with a calm grace. That's a really tempting offer. So, I think I only have one choice, I said, before quickly reaching out and gripping his outstretched hand with my darkened god hand. The man convulsed, before slowly reaching out and gripping onto his throat. His fingers dug into his flesh as his eyeballs popped forward and became bloodshot with the breaking of blood vessels as he strangled himself to death. His fingers still digging into his skin with death spasms long after life had left him. Eideloln and I simply watched as the man choked the life out of himself, staring down into his cold eyes as the spirit left him.
That was easy?
Eideloln said with caution. Yeah, it was, I replied, also unsure of the situation. It was then that we heard a laughter that grew and grew until it was bellowing at us. Eideloln turned to find Solomon, still very much alive, standing a safe distance from us. Eideloln quickly used the darkness of the night to lash out and cut straight through his torso with a solid blade of shadow. Solomon gurgled as his intestines spilled out over the wooden deck and down into the pool, turning some of the water sanguine red. Then, the laughing began again, this time from the balcony above, on the upper deck. Solomon stood there, hands on the safety railing as he looked down at us, cackling at us. Eideloln once more used a solidified blade of shadow, this time to cleanly decapitate him, like a hot knife through butter. His head popped off and fell to the deck with a splat. The laughing continued still. Solomon stood there just a few feet from me. He was so close that I could reach out and touch him, so I did. I reached out with my dark hand and grabbed him by the throat. He began to claw out his own eyes and attempted to pull his own head apart as I held onto his neck. The laughing continued. Then it was added by a second voice, then a third. Many more and more of them appeared, all of them laughing at us before several dozen of them shifted sideways and converged into one figure, who finally ceased his laughter.
I can do anything. I can make anything. I am God.
Solomon smiled.
I can make you do anything.
The platinum-haired man added before raising his left hand into the air. This hand was the one that wore the ring, the seal of Solomon, the real Solomon. The man then twisted his wrist with just a slight flick, which caused me to be swept off of my feet and flip upside down. There was nothing I could do. I just hung there with my feet toward the sky, like a child's toy that had no will of its own. Solomon then opened his hand wide and let me drop to the wooden deck, where I landed with a loud thud on my back, causing me quite a bit of pain.
I can show you anything.
Solomon said, as I suddenly found myself in my own home, watching helplessly as my daughter was beaten and torn asunder by ravenous, demonic creatures, the lot of them scratching and gnawing on her broken, blood-covered bones, tearing the flesh from them, as I screamed for them to stop, but they paid me no mind, as if I wasn't even there.
I can make your worst nightmares a reality,
he added, as Eideloln burst into tears, screaming and sobbing, as he forced her to watch her parents die all over again, taunting her, making her feel responsible for their deaths. He showed us things, horrible things, dreamscapes, hellscapes, bright, vibrant, swirling colors, and the black, cold emptiness of the void, beautiful spheres of dreams, and then the horrible things that ate them, shifting masses of darkness with strange appendages and fang-filled mouths and eyeballs that made no rhyme or reason to their moving placements. He then showed us people in joyous occasions like anniversaries and birthdays. Then we watched as their bodies withered and rotted away to nothing, as decades seemed to pass in an instant. He showed us people being tortured by the same demonic creatures that I had seen in the vision of my daughter, burning, bruising, biting, and burrowing into their aching flesh as they screamed and pleaded for help. I was powerless. I could do nothing. Solomon really could make me do anything that he wanted, and was truly only humoring me by offering me a job as his hitman. I soon began to feel the pain of 1 billion deaths, like 100 stars all burning into my flesh at once, tearing me apart bit by bit, molecule by molecule. He broke me down and built me back up again, only so that he could revel in my torture for as long as he was entertained by my suffering. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes as the visions of horror before my eyes began to blur. Then suddenly, I heard a scream.
What?
Solomon yelled out, gripping his bleeding stomach as a blade of pure darkness withdrew itself from his abdomen. This was followed by another blade thrusting forward into his other side with a squelching sound of tearing flesh. I looked up to find Eideloln floating in the air, shadow swirling around her body, and her eyes lit up with a purple-tinted, almost white glow. Bladed tentacles of shadow flailed around her as the darkness spun in place across her body. Solomon quickly reacted and split himself into dozens of clones of himself once more, but Eideloln simply skewered them all like a kebab on a stick, pinning them all together and forcing them to reform into his true self once more. This time, with a solid spike of shadow sticking through his midsection. Solomon looked at her and smiled. He knew something that I didn't.
And I looked and beheld a pale horse, and his name that sat upon him was Death, and hell followed with him.
Solomon spoke as the knives of darkness pierced and cut his flesh. Solomon attempted to raise his hand that held the ring of his namesake, but was easily stopped by a blade slicing clean through his forearm, severing it from his body and allowing it to slide sideways before toppling to the floor. Here he let out a bellowing scream of excruciating pain. Then more blades came, cutting through his appendages and ripping out his organs, giving him 1,000,000 lashes, like hooked whips made out of shadow. He screamed and he cried, and no matter how much he begged for his life, Eideloln would not stop. She wouldn't even flinch, almost as if she wasn't Eideloln anymore. She just glared at him, staring through him with a calm rage, as her shadows tore him to pieces, ripping out his intestines, pulling apart his organs, until there was nothing but a pile of bloody guts and bones on the ground in front of her. And even after he was dead, the darkness still swarmed around her, as if it were commanding her, controlling her. "Eideloln!" I spoke her name, attempting to calm her, but I could not. Her shadows knocked me to the ground once more, forcing the wind out of my chest and causing me to gasp for air. The darkness wrapped itself around my arms, legs, and torso and held me there, face first against the hard wood, pushing me down onto it as I watched Eideloln's feet settle to the ground before they walked over toward me. I helplessly looked as she bent down to retrieve the hand of Solomon, where she ripped the finger from the palm and retrieved the ring from the stump where it had once been. Then I saw the shadows take on a more gray, smoky form as they shifted shape into 4 thin legs and a large body with a head, twisting and folding into almost solid flesh that clung tightly to bone, taking on the shape of a pale, sickly-looking horse that stood and waited for Eideloln on the deck. Without speaking a word to me, she simply walked away, climbed onto the back of this strange, ethereal creature, and allowed it to lift off from the deck, where she and it flew off into the night sky, leaving me alone to ponder what had happened. I was finally able to stand and return home to plan out what to do next, but when I stood up, I realized that I no longer had my disguise, and Eideloln, or rather her Tempest, had left me alone in the middle of the bay on a yacht of a mob boss's dead son, wearing nothing but my underwear. Great, I mumbled to myself, just great. I swam for shore, where I would find my clothes still lying on the roof of that building, right next to Eideloln's outfit. I thought about what had happened and remembered what Solomon had said, and I looked and beheld a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. I repeated what Solomon had told me, speaking to myself, and I knew that there was more to come.
Well, we certainly got some answers, but we're also left with many questions. Could this mean a 3rd series could be on its way? Well, stay tuned to find out, and make sure to come back again next weekend. And until then, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications, so I can catch you all again next Saturday.
Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.